It's funny how things sometimes align. I came outside today and I had no idea the weather was going to fit the theme so perfectly. It's May, yet it's cold gray, and the sky is spitting rain, despite the forecast saying no precipitation today. It feels almost symbolic because what we're talking about today is elder orphans, and that topic feels just as heavy as this weather. Now, for those of you who may not have heard the term elder orphans before, it's a concept that's becoming more common in discussions about aging. Elder orphans are sometimes referred to as solo agers, but I feel like that term is too soft. It doesn't capture the weight of the reality that many of us face. It's not just aging alone, it's about being truly orphaned in a way. And I'm one of them. If you're watching this, there's a chance that you might be an elder orphan too, or perhaps you're not there yet. But with the way things are heading in society, it's a possibility for many more people than we realize. Even if it doesn't seem relevant now, the trend suggests that more and more people are becoming elder orphans. And I think this is something we need to talk about, not just for ourselves, but for our communities and future generations. So what does it mean to be an elder orphan? It's not just that your parents have passed away, although that's certainly a part of it. You're truly without family, no children, no spouse, and often no close relatives to lean on for emotional or financial support as you age. You're essentially on your own. You might still have friends or a social circle, but when it comes to the deep, foundational support that family traditionally provides as you get older, it's missing. Being an elder orphan is something that has always existed to some extent, but we're seeing a noticeable rise in this phenomenon. In all the reading I've done, I've noticed that more and more articles, studies, and experts are discussing this issue. The alarming part is that our society, particularly here in the US, isn't well equipped to handle it. We don't have a strong social safety net or infrastructure designed to support people who are aging alone, and that's deeply concerning. Let me give you some personal context. I currently live in low-income senior housing, which I'm grateful for because it's affordable. But if my health were to decline to the point where I needed assisted living or more intensive care, I couldn't afford it. The likely scenario would be that I'd end up in a nursing home where my social security check would go straight to the facility each month. They'd take care of my basic needs, but that's not how I want to live out my final years. And I'm not alone in this. The harsh reality is that most people my age, I'm 69, are not prepared for this. We haven't made the necessary plans for the time when we can no longer take care of ourselves. According to the ARP, about 12% of the population aged 50 and over are elder orphans. That's a significant number, minus 12%. And the trend is growing. As people age without children, or as family structures become more fractured, more of us are finding ourselves in this position. Even those with children aren't always immune to this fate. Estrangement, distance, or other factors can mean that you're still effectively an elder orphan, even if you have biological family out there somewhere. This is all so different from how things used to be. I think back to my mother's time, growing up during the Great Depression and into the 1940s. Back then, families stuck together more. People looked after each other, even beyond their immediate family. My mother would tell me stories about how her family took in people who weren't even blood relatives. If someone in the community was struggling, no job, no money, no food, they'd live with you until they got back on their feet. There was this sense of shared responsibility for each other. I'm not saying it was like that for everyone, but it was common enough that people had a safety net, even if it wasn't their own family. Fast forward to today, and that safety net has largely disappeared, especially here in the United States. We've become more isolated, more focused on individualism, and less willing or able to care for those around us. In many other cultures, there's still a strong sense of responsibility to care for the elderly. In some places, it's considered an honor to care for your aging parents or older relatives. Here, it's often seen as a burden or something that isn't our responsibility, and that's a sad shift in our cultural values. When I was growing up in the 1950s and 60s, I don't recall hearing much about older people who had nowhere to go. First of all, people didn't live as long back then. Modern medicine has shortened life expectancy, but along with that comes a longer period of needing care. On top of that, we didn't see the same level of homelessness among older adults as we do now. According to recent studies, a large percentage of the homeless population is over 50 years old. That wasn't as common when I was younger. And while some of that is related to issues like addiction, a growing number of those who are homeless are simply aging people who have outlived their support systems and resources. So what are we left with? A growing number of people over 50 who don't have financial resources, family, or even close partners or friends to rely on. Many of us are living alone, which is fine as long as we're healthy and independent. But what happens when we're not? This is the reality that elder orphans face. For me, all I can do is keep taking care of myself as best as I can and hope that I don't end up in a long-term care facility for years before I die. It's not a pleasant thought, but it's a reality that many of us have to face. Health and Human Services reports that 77% of people over 50 have not made any concrete plans for their old age. This means no living will, no power of attorney, no long-term care plan. Yet 70% of us will need some form of long-term care, whether that's help with daily tasks or full-time care in a facility, especially if we develop conditions like Alzheimer's. The lack of planning isn't just because people are careless. It's often because we don't want to face these uncomfortable truths. I know I've avoided thinking about it too. I'm doing okay now, but I realize that could change at any moment. And yet it's hard to fully face what might come because I don't have the safety net of family or financial stability to fall back on. So what can we do about this? Well, first, I think it's important to take care of our health as much as possible. That's something within our control. For me, I'm on a slow journey of losing weight, which is my main health concern. But I also walk regularly, do exercises suited for older adults, and watch what I eat. But even when we do all of that, there are no guarantees. Health can change unexpectedly, so it's essential to do what we can now, while we still have control. The National Institutes of Health also talk about 3 major concerns for elder orphans: loneliness, chronic health conditions, and mental health issues like depression and anxiety. Loneliness, thankfully, isn't a big issue for me because I'm naturally a bit of a loner. But I know for many, the isolation of living alone can be devastating. Having some social connections, even if they aren't family, is crucial. Friendships can provide a lifeline, and staying engaged with others can stave off some of the mental and emotional toll of being alone. Then there's the issue of mental health. As we get older, we're more prone to depression and anxiety, which can lead to a decline in physical health as well. I've dealt with anxiety my whole life, and while it hasn't necessarily gotten worse with age, it's something I have to manage. For others, depression can become a serious issue, leading them to withdraw and even neglect their own well-being. So what can you do if you're facing the prospect of being an elder orphan? First and foremost, don't give in to despair. I'm a firm believer in maintaining hope and a positive attitude, even when the situation feels overwhelming. It's easy to catastrophize and imagine the worst-case scenarios: living in a gutter at 90, being in a nursing home for decades, but that kind of thinking only makes things worse. There's a concept in psychology called thought stopping, where you literally tell yourself stop when you start spiraling into negative thinking. Instead, focus on what you can do today. You can't control the future, but you can take steps to care for yourself now. Maybe that means creating a living will, looking into long-term care insurance if you can afford it, or simply reaching out to friends and staying connected with others. Another thing to consider is getting a pet. Studies have shown that having a dog or cat can improve mental and physical health and provide companionship, which is especially important as you get older. I have a neighbor who's in his 70s with serious health issues, but he's still going because of his love for his dog. That pet is his reason for getting up every day, and it gives him a sense of purpose. There's no one-size-fits-all solution to the challenges elder orphans face. It's a complex and deeply personal issue, But by raising awareness and having these conversations, we can start to prepare ourselves better, both individually and as a society. I want to keep exploring this topic because I think it's critical as we move forward. I hope sharing my own experiences and insights can help others navigate this journey. Let's face it together and try to make the best of the time we have. Thank you for watching, and remember, you're not alone even when it feels like it. Stay hopeful, stay connected, and take care of yourselves.